These air marshals operate in anonymity and mostly under their own supervision. And most of them do a good and decent job serving a patriotic service and doing so with great integrity. But when any member of this highly trained workforce veers away from the core mission, they put the nation's air security at risk. So why are we here today? Unfortunately, there have been some very high-profile scandals. The former FAMS director, Federal Air Marshal Service Director Robert Bray, retired in 2014 after being investigated for his entanglement in an alleged operation to acquire guns for officials' personal use. In 2012, Federal Air Marshals assigned to protect commercial flights across the United States were pulled from their assigned flights so they can meet on sexual rendezvous. Most recently, there's an allegation of air marshals disguising themselves as pornography producers, hiring prostitutes, and using their government-issued phones and other assets to film sexual encounters. Fortunately, these people based in Chicago had been evidently engaged in these activities. These are all ongoing investigations. There's also reportedly major alcohol abuse within the Federal Air Marshal system. But this story, this hearing is really not only intended to address those problems, but it's at least been our purview in the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, at least on our side of the aisle, that Director Allison, who's here today, and Ms. Brooke, have taken some pretty strong and decisive action. You know, through the course of the first 8 months that I've been chairman of this committee, we have heard a series of different agencies that have come before us and complained that they couldn't take decisive action. Think of the DEA, the Secret Service, the EPA. We've had some very, very salacious misconduct from some of their employees, and yet they weren't fired. They weren't put on administrative leave. They didn't get their security clearances revoked. We had a situation, like I said, with the Secret Service. Within the same department and agency, Homeland Security, why weren't those people's security clearance revoked? But what I found in the interaction, with great concern, hearing about how maybe flight schedules have been manipulated and sexual misconduct going on and inappropriate behavior, I really thought that what we were going to find is yet another agency that wasn't dealing with that in an appropriate way. Now, there's more to learn. We're not giving them a free pass. I'm not saying it's the absolute model for where we should be going, but I have been very impressed in the openness and transparency within the Federal Air Marshal system, their interaction with our committee, and what they did in a very decisive and swift manner. So every hearing we do, we're not calling for the resignation of everybody, a lot of them, but in some cases we find something that's actually working well. Because there are misdeeds going on, there are things that are going awry, and we want to learn what they're doing in order to rectify that. So I have the deepest respect for the loyal men and women who work under Director Allison's leadership. They bear a tremendous responsibility. There are some things in this hearing that I'm sure members of the public and members of this committee would be interested in hearing. Some of that is classified. I will interrupt, and I will not tolerate anybody who's trying to get specific details about the number of air marshals, which flights are they on, which flights are they not on, and how they make such selection. That would be reserved for a classified setting, not appropriate in an open hearing. We do not need to tell the terrorists who they are, what they're doing, how they do it. Suffice it to say, I have reviewed some materials that would lead me to believe, A, this service is needed, there is a threat, and it gives me comfort to know that they're on top of it. Now, I worry about what they don't know and who might be on an airplane or getting through security, and that's there are a host of other things that we should do, and Mr. Mike has done great work on this, the security badges and getting through and what the whole TSA is doing and not doing, a totally different subject. But let's talk about the good, the bad, and ugly of what's happening here with the Federal Air Marshals, and let's also give some credit where credit's due when we do root out something that's wrong and dealing with that in a swift manner. So with that, I will yield my time and now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, for his opening statement.